Looks like we are ready to welcome on our good friend, former Chatterbox Sports employee, fresh Dougie too. He's got a fresh haircut, looking good as always.
Right.
Paul Fritschner. Paul, how are you on this lovely Wednesday? How was your trip and calling the game up at Hinkle Fieldhouse yesterday?
It's great. Yesterday, I think Butler looks really good. I was impressed with the Bulldogs. Had some fun. It's just good to be talking hoops again, Reed. It's good to see you.
I know. Last time I booked you to come on our program here on Chatterbox Sports, I actually had to dip out and had to have Stone, which Stone's a better interviewer than me anyway, so you're probably better off that way. But I know you're getting, before we talk about some of the local teams, obviously Paul Fritschner, host of the Rebound Rundown and some other great college basketball products. You're finally getting to call some games on ESPN Plus. You went down to the field of 68, getting some play-by-play opportunities. How has kind of been this experience as you're traveling up to Indianapolis, you're going down to Charlotte? How's this experience been so far?
It's been awesome. I mean, it really has. Not to sound like a goober, right? But to work for so long to be able to get these opportunities, I'm just grateful to finally be on the air doing play-by-play for games like this in the Big East, games that are high-level games. Field of 68 to be doing the first game of the entire season. So I'll have one more on ESPN Plus for Xavier on Black Friday, and then I'll have 3 on CBS Sports Network in, that'll be January. I have a couple games in Charleston. I'll be down at Camel, the Fighting Camels. I'll be down there as well. So, yeah, just bouncing around, covering the sport. And then when I'm not doing play-by-play, I'll be doing more, just kind of like video-based content stuff for the rundown as we go forward. So, yeah, it's good stuff, Reed. I appreciate you asking, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Fighting Camels. We here in Hamilton, we love the Fighting Campbell Camels, as their baseball coach used to be from Hamilton. Now he's the head coach up at Ohio State University. So, been following the Camels for a while.
There we go.
Let's talk about.
It always comes back to Hamilton. If there's one thing I know, it always comes back to Hamilton.
All roads lead to the city of sculpture, the city that you spent so much great time shivering in our studio as it got really, really cold.
I miss Gina's. I miss Gina's.
How can I get you to Gina's?
It's not hard. I just got to find the time. But I need to get back. I haven't been to Gina's since my last day there. I need to get. I miss that fettuccine Alfredo desperately.
All right, let's talk about college basketball. My Xavier Musketeers, your alum, the Xavier Musketeers obviously had a tough game. Had a tough game the other night, and really through the first 3 games, their few exhibition games that they had, it's pretty clear that this team isn't as talented as we've seen from the years past. It's the first year of Coach Pitino here down there in Norwood at Xavier University. How does the roster get to where it is right now? Based off what we've seen, obviously Sean Miller goes away. How does Xavier get to the point where their roster just at this point doesn't look like it's going to be able to compete in the Big East?
Yeah, there's a lot obviously that went into it, and you mentioned some of it right there, Reed. But I think a big portion of it is, one, the NIL budget at Xavier, we'll call it like it is not top half of the Big East. It's bottom half of the Big East this year. So you're already sort of starting from a point where you need to work up and try to maybe overcoach the talent that you're going to bring in. So from that perspective, it's already going to be difficult. And then at the same time, you bring in a new coach, you're trying to figure out what you have coming back. Well, you don't have a whole lot coming back because at the time, Roddy Anderson and Lassina Traore were the only 2 players that hadn't put their names in the portal yet. Traore ends up going down to Texas. So Roddy Anderson is the only player coming back. You have an entire roster to fill out. And, on the one hand, you can say, yeah, every team has to pay every player, so that's no excuse. But on the other hand, you may at least through retention, I don't want to say take a hometown discount, but effectively that's what it is, take a hometown discount to where, a player may be more encouraged to stay with the coaching staff for a little bit less because they like the coach. They like their development plan. They don't want to go change into a new system. They don't want to be one of these guys that becomes a 4 schools in 4 years guy. I mean, even on top of all of that, if the player cares about graduation, it's hard logistically to graduate at that point. So it was always going to be difficult for Xavier this year. But I think what has been surprising for me is just like you said, it doesn't look like a team right now that's going to be able to compete very well in the Big East. And I think we anticipated that going into the season. But the other night on Monday, Santa Clara, I'm not going to sit here and say that Xavier, hear me out here. Santa Clara it's a top 75 team. They're a very good team. Xavier should have won the game. I mean, we're sitting here splitting hairs over Xavier beating Santa Clara at home. That's kind of tells you where the team is right now. But this is not like DePaul losing last night to Buffalo, who was 304th in the country. Santa Clara is a really, really good team. I'm very surprised Xavier even played. I don't know why Xavier played the game. In this point in time where in a non-conference, if you're going to play a bye game, play the sub 250 team. And they even struggled against those in the first two games.
Yeah, no, it's I checked the Santa Clara roster. There was no Steve Nash on the team, so it was surprising to see that score. Nonetheless, a decade ago, obviously when we mentioned it, Pitino's first year, a decade ago when a coach takes over a team, right? Someone leaves, goes somewhere else, and a new coach comes in. There was a chance to retain the players, but there was also kind of a built-in excuse of, oh, these aren't my guys, right? These aren't the guys that I could go out or that I recruited, that I brought into the program. These aren't my guys. In this era of college basketball, that excuse, I'm not saying it's going by the wayside, but there are different avenues of saying, hey, I can, with the transfer portal, with the NIL era, you can make an aggressive approach and completely turn over a roster year to year. We see this almost at every, the tier 1 teams, the tier 2 teams, the tier 3 teams. They're having great turnover. Is it fair to characterize Xavier's approach to this season with, the transfer portal, with their NIL as strategic and kind of a long view approach to their team?
Yes, except the problem is right now you're not seeing the guys that have multiple years of eligibility play like they should be on the team going forward. That's the biggest concern to me, because you always knew that this year was going to be a development year, that this year was going to be a year where you hope. I think in college basketball right now, it's fair to say that most teams are operating off of 2-year plans, right? That you have your core coming in for 1 year, and then the second year is the year that you can really compete because you can figure out who from the core worked, what can you pair with that core out of the transfer portal. The biggest issue you've seen through 3 games right now for Xavier is that I'm not sure any of the guys that are coming back next year, and you can say it's early, but there are things that you can identify in these players that it's tough to see a lot of these guys being able to compete at a high level going forward. And so what does that mean, Reed? It means that next year in the transfer portal, are you going to have to do this all over again? Maybe. Now, it's 3 games in. Richard Pitino and his staff is known for development, so can they develop some of these guys when you get into Big East play? Maybe it was a rocky start. Maybe they're just not acclimating to the system as well as they should be, and you'll see some guys kind of catch heat as the season goes on. But it's really concerning to me watching Xavier trying to figure out which one of these guys, you were hoping it would be Anthony Robinson, but his rebounding rate is the same as Xavier's lowest rebounding rate last year from, I believe it was Davion McKnight and Ryan Conwell had the lowest defensive rebounding rate on the team last year. I mean, they're guards. They're not even trying to be down in the post. And I believe he's sharing the same rate as those 2 guys. So to me, to get back to your question, you're trying to develop for a couple of years. And right now you're hoping that at least maybe a couple of these guys can pan out so that next year you're not talking about a roster of, 8 to 10 guys out of the portal to turn the whole thing over again. Because at that point you become concerned about fatigue with a lot of factors. It's just not optimal.
You spent a lot of time around Coach Sean Miller over the past few years, obviously the Sean Miller podcast, and you spend some time now with Richard Pitino. You're looking at this year. It was an open secret even when Richard Pitino's dad's going, it's going to be a tough year for Xavier this year. When it's an open secret about what this season is going to be, how as a coach, if you're Richard Pitino, the junior, if you're Coach Pitino for Xavier, how do you devote time into I can't completely forget this season, though he might want to at the end of the year. I can't completely, forfeit this season away. I've got to develop these guys. I got to keep going. But also the future is elsewhere. Also, the future is, hey, we got to be looking at different areas. How do you deviate that time, especially right here in the season? And I know you're not a head coach, but that's a tough line to kind of tiptoe across.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. And I would say the biggest thing is trying to make sure that donors, the people that have the money, the people that are supporting the program through an NIL lens, that they are understanding the vision and what's going to come down the line. Because if the big donors are frustrated with the vision or don't see it or don't understand it or don't want to support it, then you're going to have a hard time financially backing the plan going forward. So that's where you have an issue right now is, can you make sure that the people that need to support this program over the next couple of seasons to give Richard Pitino the resources that he needs to win at Xavier? It's been rumored that Xavier had about $6 million in NIL this year, which I think $6 million this year is definitely on the low end, but it's not nothing. It's not the lowest in the Big East. I think, coming from New Mexico, seeing what you need as a coaching staff to compete at the Big East level, and also I think that's the biggest thing. You're getting an understanding now. He was at Minnesota for 8 years. But Minnesota is probably the lowest job in the Big Ten as far as resources go. And so then you go to New Mexico, where you're the king of the dance in the Mountain West. You win the Mountain West in back-to-back years. Now you come to the Big East, where you have St. John's, you have UConn, you have Creighton. You have these big-time teams that are contending for national championships in UConn and St. John's. And that's not what was happening at New Mexico. You have to adjust. You have to change how you recruit. And I think the coaching staff through an NIL lens will learn a lot this year about, what they need going forward. I think it'll be a good year for them from that perspective. And, again, you just hope that the people that are giving the money and the people that need to understand the vision do, so that they are set up for success and give Richard what he needs over the next couple of years.
Do you think it's possible that, if this season continues like it's going and, this team isn't competitive at all in the Big East, that those big pockets do get frustrated and rescind their energy, rescind their money, rescind everything backing the program? Do you think that's possible, or do you feel as though the big pockets are fully behind the future of this program?
It's a great question, and it's one I wish I really had a better answer to, because it's always people with a lot of money. You're considering this an investment. And right now, if you invested $6 million into a team that, quite honestly, if it plays like it did on Monday, will be lucky to win 10 games this season. That's hard to convince people with a lot of money that there's a good return on investment there. At the same time, though, a lot of people that are donating a lot of money to Xavier are invested in the well-being of the school, in the well-being of the basketball program that's been built up over the last 35 seasons, and they don't want to see it fall to a Seton Hall or a DePaul level, which can happen quickly. I mean, you look at Seton Hall, they were competing with Kevin Willard in the Big East. Right. You had some serious talent on Seton Hall teams 7-8 years ago, and now all of a sudden they're the laughingstock of the Big East. DePaul, they've never been great in the last 20 years, but they at least kind of put some resources behind their team with Chris Holtmann in the last 2 years. Now they lose to Buffalo last night. Their season's effectively over before it even really gets off the ground. So if you're a Xavier donor, you don't want to see this team fall to that kind of a level. And that's where I think when push comes to shove, the money will be there for Richard and his team to compete.
Final question on Xavier is, Monday was the worst loss at Cintas Center in over a decade. That never happened when you were the MC. Do you feel partly responsible for Monday's loss since you're no longer the MC?
I think we all just really have to look in the mirror and assess what we can do better, and I think for myself, that's something that clearly, like you said, it didn't happen, but at the same time, you control what you can control, Reed, and you, again, just have to get back to the drawing board, get back to practice, and keep moving forward.
Well, I would like to get better, but I need guidance from the head coach. I need him to put out grades on how to know where I stand, and I didn't see the grades on after Monday's loss, so maybe he'll come out with some late week grades.
No report card. What would you say would be your report card, Reed? What was your report card from Monday?
Offense F, defense F, student section A+. The guy in 134 row D, seat 12's nachos, A-, because we know Cintas Center has great nachos. So that's my report card on the Xavier Musketeers. Let's talk about UC. And obviously Dayton, they played a big game yesterday. It was a game that was interesting because watching it was tough watch at times. And I know you were calling the Butler game. But at times it was a tough watch. But you beat Dayton at home by 12 points. Yeah. And kind of the energy following that game was, you beat a good team like Dayton in 12 points. What was your takeaway from the Bearcats off their win yesterday against UD?
Yeah, I went back to watch it last night when I got home, and it did definitely feel like a typical Cincinnati game in the last couple of years where you had so many opportunities to pull away in the game, and you never did because you had 24 turnovers. But at the same time, Dayton, it felt like a classic Dayton game where they only make 2 threes, one of their worst three-point percentages in years, 2 for whatever it was, 25 from 3. Cincinnati kept leaving the door open for Dayton to come back, and they never could. They could just never get over the hump. Dayton right now, they have the talent to be an NCAA tournament team. I firmly believe that Dayton has the NCAA tournament capabilities on their roster to get back there and to be a dangerous team in the A10. They are being held back right now for some reason by just coaching decisions that I don't understand, lineups that don't make a ton of sense. And I don't really get why Dayton can't get over the hump right now, because it feels like I said they have the talent on the team to be able to do it. Credit to Day Thomas and Sean Abayev last night. They both played fantastic, especially for Sean Abayev. And I know it's not technically a high major game, but it's the first true test of the season for Cincinnati. He passes it. Day Thomas played a spectacular game, both on both sides of the ball. For Dayton, Amal Latang, not great. They need him to be better. They need him to be a lot better this year. It was a clunky game, but in the end, for Cincinnati to get the win like that over a local school, it's always important for all these teams that play each other around the Cincinnati area. You're competing in recruiting ground. It's good for Cincinnati to get that win, and you survived it at the end of the day. And now you do have a lot of things to clean up. Only one game for Cincinnati between now and the game against Louisville at Heritage Bank next week. But still, I would say for Cincinnati to win that game at home, it's important, and they got it done.
It felt like you just mentioned it feels like Dayton has the talent to get there, and it feels like they've had the talent to get to the NCAA tournament for the past few years. But you mentioned, rotation pieces, and it feels like you just stopped short. Do you feel like the head coach Anthony Grant is the reason they haven't been able to get over that hump?
I think it might be.
Okay.
I think so. I think it might be, and he's been there for long enough now. He's obviously had very talented teams when he's been there, but look at last year. Last year, going into the conference season, the question was not, are they going to make the NCAA tournament? The question was, what seed are they going to be? And then they lose 3 games in the A10 that they had no business losing, back-to-back-to-back losses in the A10 that they had no business losing. At some point when you have talent like this, you've clearly gotten the talent to campus, you've recruited it, but now you got to win with it.
Last night they shoot 2 for 26. Is that a bigger telling of UD's struggles, or is that a telling of, hey, UC, put the clamps on?
I think 2 for 26 tells me it's more UD. That's not to take away necessarily from Cincinnati defensively, because I did think they played well defensively, but 2 for 26. At some point, when you take that many attempts, you're going to hit 5 or 6 at least. But no, 2. That's more of a reflection of Dayton, in my opinion.
Louisville played Kentucky last night. Dominated. Ryan Conwell had a really big game. Is Louisville for real?
Yes, Louisville's for real. In fact, I came onto this show I was talking to Stone. He asked me for a national championship prediction before the season started, and I said Kentucky. And after that show, I sat there and I thought for a while, and I really did like a deep dive into both because I hadn't thought about the direct comparison between the two teams as much as I probably should have at that point when I was on the show. And I started talking to some people that, familiar with both programs and trying to get an idea of where they were coming into the season. And the more and more I really dove into Louisville, the more I was impressed with this team, the roster construction. Obviously, the backcourt going into the season was going to be fantastic, probably the best backcourt in the country. Could the pieces down low fit? They clearly do. Now, again, Kentucky was missing Jaden Quaintance, who's one of the best players on the team, an interior presence that's going to help. But all of that said, yes, it ended up being a fairly close game by margin in the end. Louisville dominated that game. And even when Kentucky made their runs, they never got it back to a one-possession game. The closest it ever got was 4. So in the end, for Louisville, I think Louisville is a true national championship contending team that if they can put it together in March, I say that because for as much praise as Pat Kelsey has gotten in his career, he's never won an NCAA tournament game. He's been there, but he's never won an NCAA tournament game. In his decade plus of coaching, he's never won a game. So this has got to be the year. I mean, this team,
Right.
if this team can't win a game in the NCAA tournament, this team is a team that can win the national championship. They got to put it together in March.
Well, I can tell you right now that Louisville is not going to settle for just making the NCAA tournament. You don't got to win one game. You got to win several games to stay around there. But he's got a good roster all together. Next Friday, UC, Louisville play. Does UC have a shot in your opinion?
Yeah, I think they have a shot. I think this is a game Louisville will probably be favored by 7, 8 points in a neutral game. But I think Cincinnati has the pieces to make this game interesting. I don't think you should just write it off because of what happened last night with Louisville and Kentucky. But I do expect Louisville, just the way that UC can't have a performance last night and expect to win that game against Louisville. They just can't, because you need everything to go right if you're UC to have a chance against Louisville. And I think it can, but the question is, what can you do now against Louisville in a neutral site game? I would expect Louisville to be favored by 7 or 8 points, probably pick Louisville to win that game, but I don't think you can totally write it off.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you so much, Paul, for coming on here today. Where can they find all your stuff?
Rebound Rundown, at the Rebound Rundown. We have a great, like a cinematic recap of the game last night. Our videographer was at UC and UD, so that's coming up some point probably later this afternoon when he finishes that up. And the Rundown, follow it all season.
Yeah, we'll be following your escapades as a play-by-play announcer. Can't wait to see you on the CBS Sports Network.
Appreciate you guys, and give a shout out to good old Jay. I know he's coming on after me, so
He will be.
appreciate you guys for having me on.
You mentioned it. All roads lead to Hamilton, and we got a Hamiltonian coming on right after
That's
you,
right.
Paul. I'll see you at Gina sometime.
See you soon, Reid.
See you.
Enjoy the Northern Lights.
We'll do.